Hi, I'm Miss Amy. This is the month of May. In May, we celebrate Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. I chose a book, Surfer of the Century. The book is by Ellie, Crowe, and illustrations by Richard Waltrip. Surf's up. Eager surfers gripped their wooden surfboards and stared out at the monster waves. Spawned far out at sea, the 30-foot bluebirds streaked across miles of ocean in a solid line, crashing in white foam on Waikiki Beach. Such huge waves occurred only on extraordinary occasions, the result of underwater earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. Who dared surf the bluebirds? Only one surfer mastered the gigantic waves that day in 1917, Duke Kohanamoko, who rode a thundering bluebird for almost 2 miles from the deep blue ocean to the white sand beach. The Pacific Ocean was Duke's backyard. Born in 1890 in Honolulu on the Hawaiian island of Oahu, Duke Kohanamoko lived with his family across the road from Waikiki Beach. Duke's childhood was filled with aloha. Aloha means love, kindness, grace, affection. It also means a traditional Hawaiian greeting and farewell. His parents were loving and supportive. He had 5 brothers and 3 sisters, and more than 30 cousins with whom to play. Neighbors helped one another and got together often, sharing the bananas, coconuts, taro, and sweet potatoes they grew in their gardens, and the fish, crabs, squid, and octopuses they caught in the ocean. When he was 4 years old, Duke learned to swim in the old Hawaiian way. His father and uncle took him in an outrigger canoe, tied a rope around his waist, and tossed him into the ocean. Wiggling like a little tadpole, Duke made his way back to the canoe. Duke's mother told him never to be afraid of water and to go out as far as he wanted. His father said that the mighty shark was his family's Hawaiian guardian and would protect him. Swimming each day, Duke soon learned to surf, dive, and hold his breath underwater for minutes at a time. In school, Duke struggled with his lessons, but in the ocean he was a star. As soon as the school bell rang, he raced to the beach and dived into the blue waves. The ocean was a second home to Duke, and he was happiest when he was swimming. By the time he was a teenager, Duke was a very fast swimmer. His tall, strong body was designed for swimming. His large hands scooped through the water, while his big feet, like fins, propelled him along. Duke had a natural talent, and he was determined to use it. He wanted to win races. He wanted to be a champion swimmer. Many of his friends could swim fast. The difference between swimming fast and winning races would be dedication and hard work. Duke pushed himself to get better, swimming miles through the ocean day after day until his arm and leg muscles burned. He dropped out of high school and started working on the beach, making and selling surfboards. He earned enough money to help pay his family bills, and he had plenty of time to swim. Soon Duke swam faster than all his friends, and he longed for the opportunity to race the best swimmers from the mainland United States. When several top Australian swimmers visited Hawaii in 1910, Duke studied their special crawl stroke. Deciding that their stiff-legged kick used up too much energy, Duke developed a flutter kick, a flexible knee version of the Australian crawl. He called his new swimming style the Hawaiian crawl and joked that his kick was the Kohanamoko kick. One afternoon in the summer of 1911, Bill Rawlins, a Honolulu attorney with an interest in swimming, was watching Duke slash through the ocean. He couldn't believe how fast the young man swam. Fetching a stopwatch, he asked Duke and 2 of his friends to swim a measured 100-yard course. When Rawlins timed the swimmers, he was stunned. Duke had shown amazing speed. Rawlins thought Duke had the makings of a swimming champion. "I'd like to coach you," Rawlins told Duke. Duke's heart leaped. "It's a deal if you think I've got it," he said. They closed the agreement with a handshake and a smile. Duke and his two friends joined with the other eager swimmers to form a swim team. Rollins told the group they had to get recognition for any records they set. They had to belong to a surf club. Duke had tried earlier to join the Helani Club and had been refused membership, even though he knew some of the members. To the club, he was just a penniless beach boy. Duke was hurt but managed to shrug off the rejection. Acting on Rollins' advice, the members of the swimming team organized the Hu-Nalu Club of the Waves. They called it the Poor Man's Surf Club because they had no clubhouse and met under a howl tree at the Waikiki beach. Sitting in the shade of the tree, Duke and his friends worked on building bigger surfboards with sleeker lines and better balance. Duke developed a huge 16-foot, 114-pound board that handled well. In Waikiki's rolling waves, the beach boys worked on new surfing maneuvers, standing on a board backward, stepping from board to board, sliding left and right with the waves, doing headstands, and riding tandem with another person, usually a pretty girl, on the surfer's shoulders. In 1910, Hawaii sports clubs had voted to form the Hawaiian Amateur Athletic Union. The creation of the AAU Hawaii made Hawaiian athletes eligible for National Amateur Athletic Union events and possible participation in the Olympics. The AAU Hawaii decided to hold its first contest, a swim meet, on August 12, 1911. This was Duke's big chance. He would compete against nationally ranked swimmers from the mainland United States. The race meant a lot to Hawaii. There were many gifted watermen on the islands, but no Hawaiian had ever been recognized by the world as a top swimming champion. Rollins was confident Duke could beat the swimmers from the mainland and make it onto the U.S. team for the 1912 Olympic Games in Stockholm, Sweden. On the day of the swim meet, excited spectators gathered at Honolulu's wharfs. Hawaii did not have an Olympic-sized swimming pool, so the contest was held in the ocean, with the swimmers racing between two piers in the harbor. The crowd hummed with eager anticipation as the start of the 100-yard freestyle race grew near. Heart-thudding, Duke stood at the edge of the wharf. Bam! The pistol shot rang out. Duke's family and friends screamed his name as the swimmers hit the water. They were neck to neck until Duke, fierce with determination, forged ahead. He plowed through the water like a speedboat, a mound of water rising in front of his chest, a white wake of foam trailing behind him. Duke shot to the finish line with lightning speed. Pulling himself out of the water, Duke was puzzled by the judges' startled expressions. Then they shouted that Duke had broken the world record. He had swum the race in 55.4 seconds, shaving 4.6 seconds off the official time. Duke grinned, shaking his head in amazement. The cheering spectators hugged him and clapped his back. Everyone wanted to touch him, to be a part of his success. By the end of the day, Duke had shattered 3 long-standing AAU freestyle swimming records: the 100-yard, the 50-yard, and the 220-yard. The judges declared that his times were fast enough to qualify for the Olympic tryouts. Duke was bursting with excitement. How great it would be to compete in the Olympics and bring home the gold for Hawaii. For weeks, reporters followed Duke around the beach at Waikiki, taking his photo and trying to interview him. The reporters found it difficult to get to Duke to say much. He was too shy and humble to talk about himself. Then bad news arrived. Duke's new records were so amazing. Amateur Athletic Union officials in New York refused to believe his times. "What are you using for stopwatches?" a sarcastic official asked. "Alarm clocks?" Duke was shattered. He feared everything was over. Trying to drown his disappointment, Duke grabbed his surfboard and headed to the ocean. "Coming down," he yelled as he launched his board over the crests of waves. His friends made way for him. They knew how he felt. Meanwhile, word of Duke's record-breaking swimming times had swept the athletic world. AAU officials, curious about the young, untrained swimmer, wanted to see Duke swim for themselves. They invited him to the mainland to try out for the United States Olympic team. Thrilled by the news, Duke and his family huddled around the kitchen table. Money was tight. They didn't know how they would pay for Duke's boat trip to California. Soon friends and supporters gathered to help. Coach Rollins arranged benefit potluck dinners and made generous donations. Duke's friends raised cash by performing a play on the deck of an abandoned ship. Along with contributions from others, enough money was raised to send Duke to the mainland. Filled with Olympic dreams, Duke said goodbye to family and friends and boarded an ocean steamer to California in early February 1912. Rollins' work as an attorney kept him from traveling, so Duke was accompanied by 2 members of his swim team. Lou Henderson acted as manager, and Dude Miller was a swimming trainer. In Los Angeles, Duke stared wide-eyed at the crowded streets. This big city was very different from his island home. Reporters described Duke as a strange-looking, dark-skinned native from the distant lands. People stared at him. Restaurant waiters pretended not to see him. After a few awkward meals, Duke decided to eat alone in his hotel room so that Henderson and Miller would not be embarrassed by his presence. Duke's first qualifying race was in Chicago. When he got off the train from Los Angeles, the icy winter wind bit through his thin suit coat. Looking for a way to stay warm, Duke stuffed cardboard under his coat and kept it tightly buttoned. The cardboard was the secret until Duke unthinkingly pulled off his coat in the changing room of the Chicago Swim Stadium. Everyone laughed as the cardboard fell to the floor. Duke burned with embarrassment, but told himself to focus on the swimming. He knew he was as good as any swimmer alive. Duke won the 100-yard freestyle race in 57 seconds. He was on his way to being accepted for the Olympic team. Pittsburgh was even colder than Chicago. Upon arriving, Duke hurried into a restaurant to order a bowl of hot soup. The waiter took one look at Duke's dark skin and asked him to leave. Humiliated, he headed for the door. Then someone called, "Hello, Duke. How about joining us?" And Duke turned to see a friend who'd visited Hawaii every few years. People were staring, but his friend said, "Waiter, please have another place set at my table for the sensational Hawaiian swimmer, Duke Hawana Moko." Duke downed his food as fast as he could. He thanked his friend and his friend's companions and invited them to visit him in Hawaii, and he hurriedly left the restaurant. That night in the Pittsburgh Stadium, Duke was tense with anticipation. He was competing against world-class swimmers, and every one of them wanted to have a place on the Olympic team. Duke dived into the pool, ready to prove himself. The water was freezing. His left leg cramped, and to his horror, Duke found he couldn't swim. He came to a crippled halt and had to be pulled from the pool. Surrounded by the booing crowd, Duke looked sadly down at his big, cold feet. He had always thought he could depend on his body, but this time it had failed him. The next day, Duke decided to swim around the pool before his first race to get his body used to the icy temperature. The crowd jeered and called him a show-off. Duke tried to ignore the taunts. He climbed out of the pool and stood alone, waiting for the other swimmers to line up. His mind went back home. He thought of all the people who had paid for his trip, his family, friends, and coach who were praying for him to succeed. He couldn't disappoint them. From the moment Duke hit the water, he swam with spectacular speed. Used to open ocean racing, he lost time on turns, but made up the loss with his furious arm strokes and powerful flutter kicks. He won the 100-yard race and then the 50-yard race, beating the world's records with seconds to spare. Now on his side, the spectators screamed their support. Thank you for watching.